Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Marley Dias, author and founder of 1,000 Black Girl Books. Marley, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again, and before we dive into the conversation, can you just let viewers who might not be familiar with 1,000 Black Girl Books, what is it?
So the 1,000 Black Girl Books campaign is an initiative I started in 2015 when I was 10 years old to collect more books with Black girls as protagonists. I noticed that in my classroom in elementary school, I never got to see myself, but at home I could see Black girl stories, and I knew that we need to bring those stories into classrooms so that not only Black girls can see themselves and view their experiences as beautiful and worthy, but that kids of other experiences and identities learn about the history of our country and learn about the history of the world. So my work has been doing that, and I've collected 15,000 books over the past 8 years.
15,000 books in 8 years. Out of all of those books, what author, what story inspired you the most and why?
I think that Jacqueline Woodson is an author that inspires me the most. She's a queer black woman who lives in Brooklyn now and is a huge mentor figure to me. She just sort of unpacks how religion within the Black community, sexuality within the Black community, how class within the Black community sort of can create a lot of the divisions that go oftentimes unnoticed. And I think she really speaks to sort of the basis and joy of humanity, whether that's love and wanting to be loved, but also understanding and using that to unpack the issues that sometimes we don't always have the words to explain. So she's really empowered me, and her book or memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, was the reason why I started 1,000 Black Girl Books. I read that story and I knew that if that wasn't going to be in classrooms, if we weren't going to be able to learn about young Black girls' experiences in the United States, we lose so much in that process. And I wanted to do something about it even more from getting to read her book. So
started the campaign 8 years ago. What has the response been? Can you walk us through maybe your favorite story of someone like really resonating with your project?
Yeah, 1,000 Black Girl Books has evolved so much. I mean, this work started as just wanting to collect the books, but it's expanded into publishing a book in 2018 with Scholastic about change making and about how parents can support their kids, producing an executive producing and hosting a Netflix series called Bookmark, celebrating Black voices 3 years ago, and now working with NEA on Read Across America. But I think that my favorite moment, although those three things are obviously key highlights, is working and getting to work at Elle.com as an editor in residence in 2016. There was a staff writer there at the time, Maddie Kahn, who's now an independent writer and writes about girls and about change making. She brought me along because I said I wanted to be a magazine editor, and I got to interview Ava DuVernay, Secretary Hillary Clinton, and Misty Copeland, all when I was 11 years old, summer 2016. And that was such a wild experience that opened me up to sort of the ways we can imagine like how change making works, that journalism is change making, and that just by having those conversations, I brought so much more power and passion to the work and got to meet people that have allowed for me to exist. So that changed my life, and I think that by her opening the door for me, I now want to be that person for other people in a way.
You're a change maker and you started at such a young age, but I'm curious, you've talked before about your mom empowering you. How can parents really empower their children? What advice would you have for them?
I think that one thing that parents can do is really understand the power of questions and of just being curious about your kid. So when we frame like questions like how was your day, you're gonna get good, you're gonna get fine, you're gonna get okay. But when you ask what would you change about your day, what's one thing that you think you might like remember tomorrow about this day? Have you made any memories today? What are the conflicts? Like asking these deeper and more inquisitive questions, and also being willing to listen to answers that we don't necessarily like, is going to be the key. That if the kid says that my worst part, I would change like going to school, I don't ever want to go back to school, we need to be okay with those answers. We need to listen to our kids and figure out more specific and sort of fine-tuned answers as to how we can build joy in their lives, be in community with them, and ultimately help them in their change making when they know it, they have a voice to trust and to come to and say, hey, I have this idea, I've noticed this thing, because they know that you will listen, they know that you care. So by establishing that trust as a parent, you can do so much to create years and years of relationships that can lead towards service.
And those deep questions, just everyone knows when you ask, how was your day? You're going to get good,
yes,
you're going to get fine.
Exactly.
But those deeper questions really make all the difference. Speaking of deep questions, I do want to pivot now and ask you about book bans. The American Library Association reported more than 1,200 attempted book bans in 2022, the largest number of attempted book bans in over 2 decades. When you hear that stat, what do you think?
I'm scared. I'm really scared. I think that one thing that is really the most challenging part of the new phase of 1,000 Black Girl Books and now sort of 18 and being an adult stepping into activism is realizing that this is a civil rights issue that is happening at the hands of politicians, and that it affects young people who are not able to vote and sort of have a say on these issues. So when we think about what's going on, the power dynamics between what Gen Z can do towards book banning and what adults can do towards book banning really puts the power in adults to change these issues. They're the ones that can be in the board meetings. They're the ones that have the right to vote. They're the people that are able to sort of access and understand the issues with these problems. But because we don't always have that intergenerational exchange that I spoke to today, I think that it's really intimidating as to how we will tackle this issue. However, I have great hope that authors and teachers are doing this work. I am the national ambassador of NEA's Read Across America, and getting to do that work and host their Human and Civil Rights Awards and meet the teachers that are actively looking to end book banning and to be the upstander in their classroom gives me hope that by speaking and engaging with them and doing the work with NEA to collaborate on these solutions and speaking at rallies, we can hopefully make some things shake and make things change. I have hope, and I hope that teachers are able to do everything they can to get the resources that they need, and I want to be a part of that mission.
What is your call to action to fellow young people? I know you can vote, but what about those kids that can't vote? What's your advice to them?
I think my advice is to be an upstander in your daily life. That those times where you might feel like it's easy for you to not raise your hand, to not be brave, to not instill like the confidence within yourself. Self-confidence and self-love is the basis of activism. You won't be able to challenge anybody else if you can't speak on your own and realize that your ideas, your story is important. So for especially teenagers that are sort of in that awkward stage, I've been in that awkward stage, I'm still kind of in the awkward stage, like I can vote, but like I haven't voted yet. So I think that it's really important for us to look back into the past, to find people in our histories that can be role models for us, that can show us that, hey, Angela Davis, Toni Morrison, Jacqueline Woodson, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there are amazing women across history that can give us the fuel to do more. And when we learn to love ourselves and to learn to love people that look like us, we will get that fuel and we will get that motivation for change.
Your favorite author, as of now, Jacqueline Woodson, writes queer Black books, and the PEN America says that books by and about people of color and members of the LGBTQ plus community continue to be a target when it comes to book bans. What do you think the cultural impact is here?
I think the cultural impact is that Gen Z will lose hope in the process, that as we lose the ability to understand this history in free public ways like education, kids are going to be forced to sort of have to outsource their own understandings of American education and of American history. And to be frank, American history is already not accurate enough because of what happened in American history, because of enslavement, because of the cultures that we've sort of taken and ripped away through imperialism and through many of the sad things that have happened. When we lose those histories and we lose those records, we lose so much of the hope to know that things can be better. So I think that book banning presents an unprecedented issue of how are we going to have doctors and lawyers and legal historians and judges and influencers and anything in a world where people don't know basic history, where they don't understand the history of the earth, they don't understand the history of the United States. And the logistical and social consequences of that cannot be overstated. So I try to break it down today as very simply like, do you want your doctor to not understand like gender and where the history of gender came from, how to talk to you about your reproductive health, how to engage with you? So that is sort of the number one imperative at this issue is how are we going to function as a world when we don't know where we've come from? So we'll lose that hope, and that's why we have to preserve it now and try to go be in events like this to fuel that flame and to keep it going.
Something that's so different between, I hate to say when I was a kid, you know, you
no,
sound
no
like 8 years old,
yeah.
But when I was a kid, opposed to the generation coming up now, is that social media was not like it was now. Twitter really became big when I was in high school and college, same with Facebook and Instagram. What do you think the importance of social media is here?
Well, social media, that's a great question, first of all. Let me not even get into the answer first because I need to think about it, because social media plays a very multifaceted role, I think, in how book banning works. In some ways, social media will help because it will, especially like I highlight queer activists and Black women of color that do amazing, women of color that do amazing work on my social media platforms, and there are many people in the digital space that provide inclusion and representation that I'm always been very positive towards. But we also know that there are huge pipelines towards misinformation and and like very sort of radicalized thoughts about like gender inequality and sexuality. So social media has a lot, it has a lot of push and pull in this issue. And I think that what we can do is sort of create those safe corners of the internet. That's what I try to do. I always try to highlight and repost and collaborate and bring influencers and bring storytellers together that will be able to dispel these myths and will speak openly about these issues. But social media will also do some of the work to detract in our ability to communicate about this. So it's important to maintain a balance, and I think that what parents can do and older generations can do is to build their digital literacy so that they don't get sucked into misinformation, so that my parents know how to post on Facebook and say that there's a Board of Ed meeting, come so we can talk about book bannings, that we can use these digital platforms as a way to bring things together, but we can also be sucked and pulled further back because of it. So it's important to understand the balance, and in my book I talk a lot about how social media helped 1,000 Black Girl Books so much. I mean, it is a hashtag, but also that parents have to be considerate of having their kids online, because I've been online for so long and I know that it's affected me in many ways. So we always want to be careful, but we know that it's going to be a key factor, however it might, turn out in this debate.
I do want to ask you a question on this op-ed that you penned for the Rolling Stone back in the summer, and it's called "The Supreme Court is Waging War on Black Women and Girls," and you wrote this: "The Supreme Court has pushed Black women out of the conversation on freedom." Can you elaborate on this for us?
So I think that with the Roe v. Wade, like the repealing of Roe v. Wade, it really opened my eyes to the idea that we had like things to lose like that in this country. I didn't know that these conversations would ever be up for debate, and I didn't think I imagined that at the beginning of my activism. But I graduated high school, and the next day we lost Wade. And I think that for me, that is a loss of so much. Biological autonomy, freedom of bodies, freedom of choice, and to not call that anti-choice for me is very difficult. So that is sort of the first part of the womanhood aspect of Black girls, is that girls and people with any sort of body parts that are affected by reproductive rights issues are hurting. We need support, we need resources, we need that freedom. And with the affirmative action ruling, particularly because as a Harvard student, it was sort of such a bombshell experience and felt so personal to see that race-conscious admissions would be taken away. We're losing our freedom in that respect, where we're unable to recognize how women have been disenfranchised, how Black people have been disenfranchised, and we're seeking to rewrite the rights and access that they have. So my Rolling Stone piece is really just about the idea that Black girls are being pushed to the margins of society in a way. As we lose these rights and we lose this access, we don't even have it when these policies weren't in practice. So to suggest that by taking them away we would make things so more fair has never made sense to me, and is something that piece really aims to make clear, is that you can't take something away as an attempt towards fairness. It's about a reconfiguring and a restructuring of the entire system, with which would make legacy admissions, like getting rid of legacy admissions or make college admissions fair. But we haven't done that. So we've just been pushing Black girls away in the process and using fairness as a way to do that.
In an earlier conversation today, I talked a lot about allyship and how we need to take it a step further, and we need accomplices. So how would you like to see people become accomplices in this conversation?
I think one way we can become accomplices is by using our pockets and our dollars. I think that teachers need everyday mutual aid and support, teachers especially that are in hotbeds for book bannings. We can Venmo them, we can clear their Amazon wish list, we can get them the resources they need, we can buy the books, and teachers have been incarcerated, we can get them out of jail for being a librarian who teaches kids books about slavery. That people are actively losing their freedom for sharing stories of freedom. And I think that the way we can work towards things is by moving our money and by moving our dollars towards the things of the future that we want to live in, not towards a future that we're very, very nervous about right now.
I know you're nervous about the future, but is there anywhere you're seeing a glimmer of hope?
I'm seeing so much hope at Harvard and with my friends, and even being in spaces and rooms like these. It is so gratifying to still be able to come back here 5 years later and to think about how different I was, or some odd years later, from 7th grade to 14th grade. So 7, oh my gosh, so many years later. I don't know how many years later, but a lot of years later. And getting to reflect on how far I've come and how much hope I still have really makes me happy and makes me think about how many stories and people could have been touched by my work in the process. So for me, I have so much hope in the young people that I do meet that have been touched by it. I have so much hope from just my own story and the things I've been able to overcome. And I think that as long as, hope is the right response to consciousness is a John Green quote, another author who I love. And it was my yearbook quote as well. So as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm breathing, as long as, there are thoughts still turning up there, it's really important for us to be hopeful and for us to share that with others.
Today, a lot of our conversations have been around lifting other women, lifting other girls up. And you talked about, you started this in 7th grade, 7 years, give or take ago. So how would you empower that 7th grader today?
I would empower her by telling her to relax. I think I can still be very stressed out at times, and I think that for me, what I was doing at that moment was so special and so different, and it was difficult for me to see the impact that it was making, but I would tell her to relax and that just be happy, be proud of yourself, be excited, and to live in the present, because it's been such a beautiful journey over these years. And even though I definitely have sounded more nervous and negative today than I may have at that time, there's so much that we still can work towards for building a better future. And I would remind her that I'm still hopeful and just tell her to enjoy it.
And what's next for Marley?
Class on Monday, but other than that, I am still continuing and wanting to be an author and a writer in various forms. So I want to do more freelance journalism. I write at the Harvard Crimson as an art staff writer. You can always check out my pieces there. And I do mental health advocacy work. So September 18th, 22nd will be Green Ribbon Week, which is a positive mental health campaign that I co-founded a couple years ago along with my preschool best friends and all my favorite people that we do at my local high school, my former local high school in New Jersey, and across the state of New Jersey. So we want to continue that work, and I'll be posting about it online, but wear green in solidarity, have that awkward conversation, listen, learn, breathe, move, and connect. So I'm trying my best.
Thank you for the inspiring conversation, Marley Dias. Thank you.
Appreciate it.